It's Blanca Avelar, and my myth is myth number 10. When people die, they pass through a universal series of psychological stages. What is the myth? This myth focuses on the idea that it is most likely that someone who is about to go through the life process of death may experience the five psychological stages of grief beforehand. Elizabeth Kubler-Ross initiated this idea that potentially became well known across the United States, and it basically sums up that before death, a person goes through DABDA, which stands for denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance. The five stages of grief. The denial stage means that the person cannot accept that they are about to end their life cycle. The anger stage is where the person wants to neglect the idea that the life cycle is actually ending. Bargaining tends to be the stage where the person wants to find a way to opt out of the natural process of dying, while a person will experience depression when they realize they are going to die and can't do anything about it. Lastly, a person will go through the life cycle of acceptance when they come to terms with their death. My stance on this myth is that it is not true because the psychological stages of grief may not be experienced the same way for everyone. Some people may feel each psychological stage in a heavier way and may also experience them in different order. Grief is unexpected and can also be experienced in distinct ways by various individuals. Unrealistic expectations are set for how a person is meant to experience grief, and this can ultimately cause self infliction with a person for not grieving in a socially acceptable manner. Two pieces of debunking evidence. Kubler-Ross's myth is reasonable, yet research evidence suggests many dying people don't pass through her stages in the same order. COP 1998. In other words, there's evidence that dictates that people do not necessarily go through all five stages of dying in linear order. Some people may skip the stages, experience them in distinct orders, or revisit them various times. The misconceptions of the myth that all people go through five stages of psychological grief has allegedly been backed up because instead people appear to cope with their death sentences in many ways. Studies of dying patients reveal that many skip Kubler-Ross stages or even pass through them in reverse order. Buckman 1993, Baum 1998. Due to the fact that it is not mandatory to go through the stages by sequence, patients are often seen experiencing stages out of order. This similarly connects to a valid point Kubler-Ross made in her book, in which she said that our grief is as individual as our lives. In Kubler-Ross, Kessler, 2005, Part 1. To be more precise, Kubler-Ross wanted to emphasize that there is no predictable or correct way to grieve a loss, and grieving process is shaped to a person's personality. Grief should not be compared to one another because while some grieve openly, others grieve emotionally in silence, and neither is a correct way to grieve, so we shouldn't compare the way we grieve to somebody else's grief. Analysis of additional external source. For my additional external source, I chose the article Why Scientists Want Us to Stop Talking About the Five Stages of Grief. And the article debunks the myth by stating that it is not supported by scientific evidence and can cause harm to individuals because Elizabeth Kubler-Ross was working with terminally ill patients and originally described anticipatory grief in people facing their own death, not those grieving others. And in the following future, it was applied to all forms of grief by society, which wasn't her intention in the first place. Additionally, the article suggests that there is no evidence that people move through these stages in order, so people may feel pressured if their grief doesn't follow the expected, anticipated path, and the idea of just getting all the way to the accepted stage can internally eat someone up. The article highlights that the psychological stages dismiss that grief is completely different for everyone in all sorts of aspects, and it is more important to confront losses and not just be focused on getting through each stage of grief. Last but not least, this is my reference page where I incorporated all my sources and added my external source as well in MLA format. Thank you so much for listening and watching.